Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of Musically Mindful, a show where I sit down with your favorite musicians, artists, and even some of your friends to discuss mental health within the music space. My name is Mike Renzetti, and I'm really stoked to have a special guest with me today. I'm getting to really talk to him for the first time and pick his brain on what I think is a unique niche within the music space that he's creating. He is an actor, comedian, improv enthusiast, having gone through Second City in Chicago. He is the mind behind some of your favorite jam band centric comedy creations, really making waves within this community with his ability to capture what a lot of us are talking about and thinking about in a really lighthearted way. You might also know him as host of one of my personal favorite podcasts, The Best Show Ever. So please help me welcome to the show, Cam Herdt.
Oh man, such a kind intro. Thanks, Mike. You know, I
You're
I record my intros separate, and so we always just start the podcast. That feels really good to hear the intro. Maybe I should start doing that.
It's so funny that you say that because after Saxy and I recorded, we talked about exactly that. And he was saying how, yeah, when I see other guys, they like do their intro separate. And then his girlfriend chimed in and was like, yeah, but then like you didn't get to hear that and get gassed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? It's a parallel. I like to do my thing. I like to be a little bit different, but also people that I welcome onto the show, I want to be ready to go and welcomed and be like, Saxy said it best. He's like, it's cool hearing that. I've done some cool shit.
Yeah, yeah, he did say that. And that's such a good way to start the podcast. I should do that. I might have to jack your stuff here.
I
Copy you a
t-
little bit.
tell you what, you can have it. I'll share.
Sounds good.
Help me, help you, help us.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
But yeah, in a serious way, I'm so stoked to have you on to talk and really, get to know each other, but also really pick your brain about the niche that you're creating within the space and also just, give people a little bit of insight into who you are because I'm sure on the surface a lot of people see you as, you're the fish video guy, whatever insane Wayne, whatever whatever moniker that you adopt for the moment, but yeah, I want to let people see, who Cam is.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, man. My mental health journey has been like a decade in running now that I've been like cognizant of it and mindful of it, musically mindful of it. But I'm looking forward to diving in and talking about how some of this stuff has come to be.
Awesome, man. So let's just dive right in on that tip. So within that of itself, when I say mental health, what exactly does that mean to you?
To me, it means an awareness of where you are mentally um at any given moment. I mean, I think for me, like the beginning of my 20s, I was just so like out to sea um with where I was like emotionally or mentally at any given moment with like stress response or depression or like, I had started getting legitimate panic attacks in my early 20s and was just like so in a fog of what that was. And so for me, like understanding my mental health meant um becoming mindful of it, like knowing when I'm like, wow, I'm like really anxious right now, and being able to note depression or note, you know, any given feeling that's kind of overtaking. Um, and that's like noting and being mindful of where I'm at. That's been about a 10-year journey at this point. Um, ever since I started like moving to Chicago and like doing art and comedy and um it's like through starting doing comedy and like following this art creator path starting around like 2014, I like quickly realized that was going to take me knowing myself a lot more. And in the beginnings of that, I think that's when a lot of like my mental health journey really started. I'm like, wow, I got to start figuring out why this or that is going on. um so yeah, mental health is like super simply just the awareness of who you are, where you are, how you're feeling, that kind of stuff.
I completely agree, and it really is a matter of, the ability to check in, the ability to accept where you're at and understand it. And I think I mean, acceptance and things like that are something that I particularly struggle with in many ways through, you mentioned how it's a journey and it started 10 years ago. That's the reality of mental health for everybody is that the journey starts at different places and it never stops. It has ups and downs and U-turns and K-turns, and sometimes you have to drive over the median, and and
Yeah, yeah,
and make it happen. Um, but I think that it's very it specifically in the terms of awareness is
yeah,
exactly what you need to pay attention to. And mental health means so many different things to so many different people. And I'm sure that the beginning of this journey for you in terms of the content creation, just like you said, is, as somebody that's kind of doing something in a similar capacity, it's a trip. It's a real challenge in ways that I would have never even thought of. And I guess that I kind of want to dial back and really ask, in terms of comedy or your stand up and your improv, like I said, I'm sure people know who you are and that you came through Second City and all of that, and Wisconsin to Chicago to LA. But when exactly did comedy or just kind of entertainment in general become a thing for you to focus on and kind of put energy into?
it's fun. Like it's funny to be talking about comedy and mental health. And you hear comedians talk about this all the time, but like comedy came into play as a reflex, very early on in my life. Like my dad had four brothers, so I had these like Chicago uncles that are like tough guy dudes who like told stories about the fights that they were in, and I'm like just so I'm not that guy now. So when I was like 7, I was super not that kid, like. And so but they were also people who like knew every quote of every SNL sketch ever, and knew every movie quote ever. And so like that really quickly for me became like, this is how I can, like amongst like my friends or amongst my family or amongst like, a stressful situation, I can, you know, fucking do the Eddie Murphy hot tub bit perfectly, and my uncles were like, that's amazing, like he's so, and like, and so it was a real quick like reflex early on. And then it's not like anything I considered, like, even though I knew every SNL sketch, like we went through everybody's catalog, and I, was like huge into Jim Carrey and like knew all the movies and could do the fucking, scenes and stuff. Like that was not something I considered like an option when I was like in, middle school or high school. I was like really serious about sports and really serious about, that kind of stuff. But um like even within that, like I loved being on a team and collaborating and like knowing my role within a team. Like I was absolutely never our best athlete. But like good enough to play, and then good enough to like, now I've got to like be helpful towards the dynamic of this basketball team or this football team or this whatever it is. Helping calm guys down, helping bring guys up, helping make things light when it's stressful, like also just a reaction to the moment type thing, not feeling like, oh yeah, I'm like, I got jokes and I'm going to go tell jokes now. Like, it's like, this is what collaboration takes, is like pulling people along or all that kind of stuff. And so it wasn't until I'm like looking at schools, like looking at colleges, super small colleges to play sports. And it would be like in Austin, Texas, or like in Madison, Wisconsin. And they would be like, yeah, we've got this great arts scene here where we, there's like stand-up clubs and our students love going to these comedy nights. And I was like, oh, I could even maybe like start doing that on the side as like a little fun thing, like as an excuse not to do schoolwork or something. And so like it wasn't really until then that I like started thinking about doing comedy as like a craft, you know. Until then it was all like a reaction or like a thing that I felt like I could bring to the table, um either to protect myself or to like, you know, be that guy for a group, you know. Um and then moved to Chicago for a job like right after college, and um like still like through college really didn't do, you know, we went and saw some comedy stuff and I was like, that was fun. I don't know if I really want to perform at any of these places in Milwaukee. Like nothing really like inspired me super hard. But when I moved to Chicago, like Second City, and you know all these open mics and this like awesome scene of comedians that I already knew about was there, and so that's when I started like going to open mics a lot and meeting new comedians and like hitting 3 or 4 mics in a night, and then you know had a boss that signed me up for a Second City class when he was like drunk at a trade show. He was like, you're gonna he's like you don't even like stand up. He's like, you want to be Jim Carrey or Ben Stiller or some shit. And so he's like, you got to do Second City. And he was like, signed me up for this class and didn't even remember that he did it. But I took the class because I was, you know, and had never done any acting or anything like that. But, you know, was like, oh, this is a way to like do the collaboration thing again. Like if you're in an improv team, you got to like, you know, make other people look good, make yourself look good type thing. And so I dove like super hard into that. And that was like the entirety of my Chicago stay was like performing live, either sketch or improv comedy, like pretty much the whole time.
I find it really interesting that in both of those scenarios, whether it be within the sports or your journey into improv, collaboration was a really key thing for you, whether it was that you felt like you were a role player on the sports teams or getting into improv, because in a similar way throughout my life, you know, everybody says the best comedians are the people that had like the most fucked up lives and childhoods, because it's you have to learn to laugh. You have to be able to make light of the situation. And, you know, I've had an interesting road myself. And growing up, I had a lot of friends that told me that I'd be good at that. And I was the same way. I was kind of a parrot, you know, like I'd watch a
Yeah.
movie and you get the voice down. I remember when I was a little kid in camp, I won a talent show contest because I did a fat bastard impression. And I mean, I'm in like probably fifth grade, sixth grade, you know, what have you. And it was the thing just enough not to be myself
Yeah.
and make people laugh, which made me feel like, oh, okay, like that's good. And that internally, you know, it makes you feel good about yourself. But I like how for you, collaboration really became more of a mainstay, because stand up can be kind of a lonely enterprise, right? It's you and the crowd, but it's not like music where like crowd kind of has involvement. Obviously you do crowd work and stuff like that. But when you're at an open mic, the most crowd involvement is a guy like heckling you from the back in the dark.
Yeah, right. It's like if you can get anyone to look up from their notebook, that's like a crowd participation, you know. It's not like
Exactly.
this like active experience. Yeah, and stand up was like kind of like working out. Like you had to get yourself ready to go alone. Like it's not like you know, it was easy to skip the gym some nights because it was like there was no one hyping me up. But if you're like you got to tell a whole team of people like, hey, I'm not going to be there tonight, there's like this added, you know, thing. If you're like feeling so like it would pull me out of feeling low early on living in Chicago too. Like, you know, I'm like up to my ears and, you know, new city anxiety and all that kind of stuff. And even though my family was from there and we had gone down so much and I was like so excited to live down there and like even kind of knew my way around, it was still just like, you know, uh crazy. Like anytime you move, anytime you like uproot yourself and move into a new situation, it's anxiety inducing. But like having comedy and having that to focus on and having these like shows to look forward to was awesome. And it felt like a, you know, because I was like so nervous to do the shows too. So it was almost like a cold bath of anxiety. I was just like, I'm already like anxious living in the city. I'm gonna go do this like
Right.
super anxiety inducing thing, and then afterwards, it's like that was awesome. Like you know that feels so good, you know. And yeah, I became like very addicted to that super quickly, and like loved being a part of the dynamic of a improv team, whether it was like a group of 8 or you know the thing that I got really into was two prov. It was just me and my buddy Trent, and we hosted a midnight show together. That was like very meta, very broken, you know, comedy improv stuff that you could get away with on a midnight show. Um, but it was so much fun to get better every week doing that, and like, you know, through that run, like through me starting to get into comedy and like really dive headfirst into it and host shows and all that kind of stuff. I'm also going through like the beginnings of some of the really tough depression I would be going through early on or like in my mid 20s, you know, and I'm like having panic attacks and passing out on the train and, you know, like trying to figure that out and starting to go to therapy. And um, like that, those years, like 2014 to 2019, we're just like such an exercise in like let's figure out my mental health, let's figure out why my body reacts certain ways to stress, and also through that let's express it and have this outlet, you know, to like dump expression, you know, because the improv shows every night, especially this midnight show, it did not have to be buttoned up or polished or nice, or it could be real, like throw stuff at the wall and see if it works. And it was like so cathartic. And like you would be, I would be like in this room of like, you know, we would like invite another team to play or open for us or something. And it's like midnight on a Friday and they're like tired or like people are like drinking coffee and like, why did we say yes to this? And I'm like so excited for like my therapy release, like, you know, explosion that I'm about to like, you know, let loose on. Yeah. And that, like, that whole period really helped me get to know myself a lot better. And it was through like really, really diving into art and really diving into my own mental health through therapy, through going to therapy.
I don't think that therapy gets enough credit in a lot of ways because I feel like everyone has a different approach to it. Everyone has, oh, well, I don't need to pay somebody to tell me something. And I was a victim of it too. I was like, I'm intelligent enough that I can recognize exactly what that guy is going to tell me or what that woman is going to tell me. But it's when you can kind of get out of your own way and be like, well, it would probably still be good to have that person tell me because they're unbiased and they're a professional and they're not some kid who thinks that they're on top of the world when they certainly aren't because they wouldn't be going to therapy if they were.
Oh yeah, totally. Oh yeah, it was like he would like unravel stuff really simply that I had just been telling myself a story about for months. You know, it was like I'd be like 2 or 3 months into therapy and I would be like, well, and you know, I wasn't really good in this scenario with this friend that I'm talking about because I am, you know, this way typically. And he's like, I don't really think that. And I'd be like, what? He's like, just through us talking for the last 2 months, like, you're not that way. I would say you're usually like this, or this. And I would just be like, like my
Yeah, glass
head would,
shatters.
it'd be like, oh, like I was just, you know, and that's just like one little thread of like a story I'm telling myself that I don't think is consequential to my mental health at all. But like, there's a billion examples of that. There's like a billion little threads of all these little stories that you're telling yourself that, yeah, it's really, really helpful to have someone there. And this guy, you know, was like, not who I thought my type of therapist would be either. He was like a very like he he had like Nathan Fielder vibes, you know? He was like very like monotone, like not a lot of like I when I'm like talking with someone and I'm like, especially like a new friend, I feel like, and you're doing this right now, you're like very giving while you're listening to me. You're nodding,
Mhm.
and
We're both
he would
throwing a
just,
lot of hands.
yeah, a lot of gesturing, like a lot of making sure for the other person that they're getting it and stuff. And he would just be very like flat in his responses and very flat in his delivery. And I remember talking about like listening and energy and like how I feel like I give my energy in this certain way. And he would talk about like you can listen, and not give so much of your like there would just be like all these little things that would really help out. And it's not like he was this like uh wise shaman vibes. Like he was like it was uh I really had to like let go of a lot of like my preconceived notions because like, I my folks are great people and they're very open, but they're not therapy people. And they were not like medication people. Like we did not do like a 80 ADD fucking test for me ever. And let's be real.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and like, there's a lot of stigma around that, and there was a lot of like shame around that. Like you said, you have to kind of get through a little bit of like what you think about therapy to effectively do it, and then like that in itself becomes a lesson for other things. Like you have to get rid of your stigma of you know helping yourself nutrition wise, or like helping yourself physically, or helping yourself in a creative aspect, or becoming close to a family member that is just married, like all like those little lessons became lessons in and of itself through other things that were helping me in my art and helping me in my friendships and relationships at the time. And um yeah, I think just like coming from like the Midwestern, like, I got it mentality. You talked about that with sex. Like you had a really good analogy about like bringing in all the groceries and putting a bag around your neck, and I can put one in my back
I
pocket.
got
Like
it.
that is like that is quintessential Midwest behavior, like that's such a Wisconsin guy, and
Mhm.
I was totally being that guy, like, oh, it's fine, so
I got it.
uh, I got it.
And trust me, it's a New Jersey, New York guy too.
Totally.
It's a similar mentality with a different accent.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it's that thing of getting out of your own way. It's accepting, it's hard to just accept that you need help in any
Yeah.
capacity, especially in terms of like something that's subjective to you. Like it's my mental health. Like I don't need help from anybody else. It's my thing. But giving people the opportunity to shed light or have an ulterior perspective that can really paint something for you that you might not be paying attention to. Because, I love that adage of saying that the small victories are what add up to the big ones. But the truth is the same on the other side of the coin. The little problems are what add up to the big ones too. The things that you're not paying attention to add up and they trickle and seep into all the other areas of your life. And it's interesting for you in terms of those problems, especially with anxiety, you chose to steer into the skid instead of fully being just absorbed into worry. You forced yourself into an even further anxiety inducing situation. But I think that there's a really cool parallel here that we can make between music and comedy in the terms of creation and writing. And musicians write and create, and it's a cathartic release. You having those shows, and whether it's throwing something at the wall or something that you sat with and really planned and wrote and got under your belt and felt good about, it's that giving yourself to other people and that ability to release it and let go. So I think there's a really cool parallel that what I've seen through a lot of musicians and other creators that I've spoken to is what they get from writing. So, in particular to that, it seems like the collaboration aspect meant something to you, but that cathartic release was really a way for you to process whatever else was going on in your life. similar to kind of like you said with physical fitness. For me, when I go work out, like that's my hour to just release. It's me against the weight, it's me lifting heavy metal and not worrying about everything else. But within that, when I exercise my body, I'm also exercising my mind.
Mm.
And through comedy and through improv, you're doing it all at the same time because there's physical comedy, there's intellectual comedy, there's different forms of improv too. So I think it's really cool that you chose to steer into the skid. And it seems like that really the creation aspect was something that you latched onto. And that obviously led you down a path of where you are now. So to kind of get into that, I'm curious, I'm sure people that are watching this have seen your other stuff, and I've paid a lot of attention to your background with music and your classic rock with your dad, and that your older brother was a Fish fan that got you into it. My older sister was also a fan, which was something cool that I thought was interesting. But when did music really kind of make its way into that headspace? Or when did music kind of start to be adjacent to the creation that you were trying?
Well, we would, when I was going through Second City and you're learning about like comedy and you're like going to comedy class, which is like, there's all that like theory around like can you learn comedy or can you learn how to be funny? Like no, but there are things like that can be learned within it, just like you would go to school at Berkeley for music, and like at Second City, one thing that would come up would be like rhythm and pacing and uh, like the rhythm of a bit and how it can be musical, and to like listen to music and like hear expression in that way, and that was something that I was super accustomed to anyway because the music that I was always really drawn to, and the music that my folks were drawn to as well was like improvised or heavily musical, like not a ton of lyrics. And so the expression was felt through the playing of the instruments and not, said verbatim, or it was like, expressed through lyrics that is also subtext. And so um that would be something that we would like to play around with in our live show, is just like the rhythm and texture of speech and like the rhythm and texture of conversation. And we would interrupt each other and try to like continue bits for a long time, and or like the timing of things, like how long can you do something and stretch it out for, where you get like a laugh initially and then you do it even longer and you get a laugh somewhere in the middle, and then you do a long where you almost lose people, but if you keep doing it a little bit longer you get another laugh again. Like that was something that was like fun to play with, that was like, that's obviously stuff that like Fish and other jam bands play with. And like in my Second City stuff and IO, and like when I would audition for things, I'm doing a lot of like character work, and like they tell you to write what you know. And I was really never doing like explicitly, like I would never write at that time, like explicitly like a jam band guy or like dude who was going to a concert. But like, um, when you're in the middle of an improv set and like the Grateful Dead gets brought up, or like going to fucking Bonnaroo gets brought up or something like that, like my friends knew that I was like the guy who has gone and taken mushrooms at shows, and like, and I'm about to go see fucking 7 Fish shows in a row or something. And they like always thought that was crazy. But so like there was like knowledge there, and they would like mess around with me in that way. But like I was never specifically using that. When I moved out here to LA, I was doing a lot less improv. There's really not so much of a scene for it here. But I was like hosting a monthly show and trying to do some stand up here and there, and make like trying to produce some sketches with my friends who film and like edit in that way, and have kind of a production company. Jane Barb Production is uh the people who I was working with, and they're so funny, but like those projects were taking a little bit longer, you know, like you get, and it's the finished product is sweet and it's awesome, and you know,
Right.
but like I like almost kind of lost the joke in the meantime. And I was really looking for ways to like, how can I get jokes out right now and, you know, do stuff that's funny and not think about it too hard. Like let's think of the initial joke. Let's hit that button like 6 times with a bunch of different takes, and then let's release it and be done with it. Because, you know, a big thing that was, I think, starting to gum up my mental health when I moved out here was like, I'm not doing anything. You know, like when I was in Chicago, I was getting up every single night and, you know, letting that creativity flow in and flow out all the time. And, you know, I'm like completely ripping Rick Rubin right now because, you know, I got really into his book right now, but he
The
basically
book is
talks about
good.
the book is good. It's
The
really good.
book's good.
But like, it's really good. But like, he does talk about how like you know, you have that portal in you that, you know, receives inspiration and creativity, and on the other end of that tube, you know, it may come in through your head and leave through your heart. The creativity needs to go out too. And I was just piling up. I was gumming myself up, and so I was like, I don't have a TikTok. I don't really think too hard about TikTok. I'm gonna download myself a TikTok and I'm just going to make jokes while I'm at my part-time job, um, and just rip them off, and we'll see if any of them do well. I'm not even going to like follow any of my friends on it. Not because I don't want them to see it. This is just going to be an outlet for stuff I think is funny in the moment. When I've got like a lunch break, and I like the third or fourth video was like, POV, you're at your first fish show, and it's a, you know, like the community was really cool about it. It like went into that corner of the internet where it should have gone. It was super cool to watch people have fun with it and stuff. And um yeah, that moment of like, write what you know, I'm like, man, I know all about like how I feel about this stuff, and I, you know, these are bits that I'm doing with my brother and my buddy Willie just because those are the guys who I know that get it, you know. And yeah, just like another like story you're telling yourself. It's just like, yeah, I could do fish stuff, but like, you know, no one really gets that. Like, you know, this and that, but like, they fucking sell out 40,000 people everywhere they go. What do you mean no one gets it? There's
A
tons of
couple
people.
people
There's
know who
tons
they
of
are.
there's tons of people who get it. Yeah, it's just like another story. Like, oh, I can't do this because of that. Like, you know, it was just fun to watch it kind of blow up, and I'm like, I can absolutely keep going back to the well, the joke well of fish stuff, because it's so funny. It's like, you know, there's so many funny things that happen in our scene. So many people in that scene are so funny. And I love talking about it. Like it's just like the most fun thing for me to write about ever. And so yeah, that whole gummed up creativity thing that was done. I was just like, every single time I think of something, it's going out like right now. And um yeah, that it's really helped me out. It's like saved me here in LA to be able to um react that way to inspiration. You know, now I'm trying to work on a little bit more like, all right, let's like um instead of just ripping off Instagram reels, let's like prune a plant that takes a little bit more work, you know. Let's make a movie. Let's make something that do something that is going to take a little bit more patience, because that's an exercise as well. Like, good for you. We know how to snap something off fast now. Let's, you know, take our time on something, and, you know, maybe not fuck up the editing of something one time, or, you know, that
Right.
kind of that kind of stuff. Like it's exciting to be someone who's like not, you know, paralyzing myself with creative anxiety anymore. That's super kind. Now let's work on making it good, you know, and like that kind of thing. So
Right. Well, evolving what you're creating inside of how you're evolving too. Because like you said, with mental health, it's a journey. The creation itself is a journey. And something that I talked about with Jeremy Kaplan was that anxiety out of initial creation, because am I making it for me? Am I making it for other people? Am I serving a purpose? What is it giving to me? But something that I think and one thing I really wanted to dig into was this niche that you've built. You know, there's people that make jam band videos, there's GIF, how many fish podcasts and all that kind of stuff. But from something I think that's interesting is in the creation of music, a lot of people draw from inspiration, but a lot of times people hit blocks because they might not have source material. In comedy, there's pop culture, there's politics, there's all these things. There's a constant life is a joke. So there's always that source material and something that you can kind of derive something from. So when you combine the two, you have this endless well of stuff to talk about. You have this how many bands there are in the world, how many. I think the first video that I saw of yours was the Broke Fan, and it was like I just remember it's like you sitting and all the voices chiming in, and it's just like, what are you doing? Nothing, nothing, nothing. Well, if I just get to a couple shows, and then you just get bombarded by all, and it's like, how many of us have been that guy where
Yeah.
like, because your friends are going to be real with you one way or another, and they're probably doing the same thing too. They're like, oh, I totally have a car payment to make, but like, you know, Fish is only 3.5 hours away. Like if we all drive, if we split, we can each share a bed, we can figure it out. Like we
Yeah,
can make it
right, right,
happen.
right.
I mean, how many times have we been that guy? How many insane Waynes are there at festivals that are like, oh you don't know me? Like
Yeah,
that
right. Yeah.
delusional, like it's
A
it's
lot of people, but I mean, yeah, like I think, something that was really they put a premium on in Chicago when I was in class was honesty, and not trying to be funny. We would do like two-person improv scenes where it's like, do not try to get a laugh in this scene. Like, you guys are gonna fold pretend laundry, and you're gonna talk to each other, and you're not gonna get a laugh, and you're not going to try to get a laugh. And like, no one could fucking do it, because it's more vulnerable to just talk as yourself, and just not try to be funny. But then the people who would do the exercise how they're supposed to, it would be like this brilliant improv scene that was like truthful and honest and like real. And it's like the best acting these two people ever did in their lives. It was like, all of a sudden they're like, leaps and bounds better than they were a minute ago. And it was just through honesty. And I think that, like, that's what I was pursuing so hard. And improv was all right, tonight, be more yourself. And then I'd go up on stage and it would be a lot of fun, but I was like a little hammy and I was like doing a guy. And it's like, tomorrow, be more yourself, and like that, is what I brought into these videos. It's just, I mean, not any of them are too ridiculous. It's just like real shit that, my brother says or that I say, or like, but it's ridiculous that we feel this way about a band that no one knows about, like that's what's
yeah.
ridiculous. And like, yeah, I think it's really hard because you want to be cool and you want to be good and you want it to be received well. But it, like, people respond to honesty. And I don't think that there's like, I don't look the part, but I don't think there's anyone who's like, yeah, that guy doesn't like fish. Like, I think it's very clear
For
that like
sure.
I'm a fish fan. And so it comes off honestly. And I think that when you're creating things, it takes a few moments to like get yourself out of show guy talk, or like, even still, when I listen back to stand-up clips, I'm like, I don't even talk like that. Like, what is that? Like, what am I doing? Like, um and you don't have to be a comedy savant or comedy, you don't have to teach comedy at Harvard to know whether someone's being honest or not on stage. You can be like, that guy's fucking trying to be cool, or he's
Hmm.
kind of doing Tim Robinson, or he's kind of, or whatever it is. Like, and so that is still the pursuit always. And I think that there was even a little bit of me that, like, when I started posting the fish videos and stuff, it's like, man, like, some of my comedy friends have no fucking idea what I'm talking about right now. And they're like, why are you doing this? But like,
Yeah.
like, to me, it's like, this is so me. Like, this is so, I think it's like exactly the type of stuff that I know how to talk about in the meantime. And so that's how the niche gets carved out. And it just is still there by just saying yes to it and just being like, you're having fun. Why would you let, somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about ruin that because it's like not cool to that person, or like what, or like, some comedy manager is not going to understand what you're talking about, but like another one fucking might. And even if they don't, like, you're making good stuff, and it's healing me. So like the whole like making stuff for me or making stuff for them or making stuff for success or making stuff for money, like I there's a lot of videos I go back and cringe at now, but in the moment when I'm hitting share, I think it's so funny. I think it's so funny. And in that moment, it's for me. The second it goes out, it's now for them. And it's now for people to decide what they like about it or what they don't like about it. And there's like people who will bring up videos where I'm like, oh, you like that one? Great. Or people bring up a joke where I'm like, oh my God, I don't even remember that part of the video, or that wasn't my favorite part of it. But like, yeah, in those moments where I'm posting the stuff, yeah, it is for me and it feels great. And so like um, the niche has been carved by saying yes to this thing that makes me feel really great to make. Like that's what it's about.
I dig that, and I completely share the same feeling about it. I talked about, to mention Jeremy again, in my journey with creating this stuff. I mean, our subject matter is very different, but it's still creating. It's still bearing a piece of me, or you bearing a piece of you. And for a while, when I was doing a video like every morning, just kind of like a words to whoever. But that was me flipping the camera around, talking to me, saying what I needed to
Yeah.
hear. And wherever that trickled out was a cool thing. And I got to a point where I remember I woke up one day and I looked and I was like, all right, what am I going to tell these people? And I threw my phone across the room. I was like, that's not what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be cathartic. This is supposed to be a release. And whatever happens to it once it's done is fine, well, and good. But I'm not enjoying this. And kind of part of this whole thing that I find interesting you said you keep saying yes. And that is very similar to how in the beginning we said your recognition of mental health is acceptance and awareness of where you are. And that mentality has led you to continue to say yes. And it's still serving you. So, something that I think is cool that you talked about on a recent episode of Best Show Ever was the parallel of yes and
Mm-hmm.
between improv and music. And I'm intrigued to see, now that you've kind of built this platform and you are gaining notoriety more and more, and the videos are getting shared everywhere, and you're popping up on Fish Radio and Sirius and all these things. The relatability is what I think is the most important, and the content that you're doing is so lighthearted and fun and funny. But I find it interesting. Do you ever feel like now you have to sort of be a voice of what the kids in the next car are thinking, or what not only you and your friends are talking about, but what everybody else is talking about?
There, no, I don't feel like I need to be a voice. It, it's really, really cool that people have like asked, like I'll meet someone at a show and they'll be like, what did you think of this or that? Because they listen to the podcast or they watch the videos and they kind of want to know like what I think of the new drummer from Goose, or what do I, and that is like a compliment in itself, that like someone would like care,
For sure.
what I thought of that, like that I know nothing about and just like have a thought on. Like that's uh absolutely a compliment. But like what I do feel like an obligation to is like remaining uh, the compliment that you just gave was like super kind about that it's a positive lighthearted thing in the scene. I like really I appreciate that specifically because I do want to thread the needle between like, you know, being the grumpy guy that's like pissed about stuff, but like not bringing any sort of darkness or any sort of like hate on any portion of the scene. And that includes like a lot of different areas. And that is a pressure that I'll put on myself every once in a while, which isn't necessary, you know, like uh I would like to continue to be like a positive force for like what our music scene is, you know, like when people who don't know what jam band music is like see one of the videos and stuff, I want it to seem like something that like is appealing to go to and not like the nightmare of nightmares like it seems to a lot of people, you know, like
Even to
that
us fans.
even to us like how much of a nightmare we are. um but like I think that um like what I try to keep in mind is that people feel the way that, you know, like when I'm doing the guy that didn't get to go to Gamehenge or whatever, like people feel that way about so many different things, like that exact way about like not getting the drop of a, you know, certain vintage item or not, you know, being able to see you know, a concert that they wanted to see of a different variety, or like not being able to get like a ticket to Yosemite because the passes ran out for the year and like now they can't hike, or like, you know, people have that thing that like no one's gonna understand, and they're gonna go to the office and they're gonna be like, "Hey man, how was your weekend?" It's like, "Sucks, I didn't get the pass to Yosemite." And they're gonna be like, "I don't fucking care about that at all." And then, you know, and like, you know, and you like are in this like turmoil, like it's almost like, you know, the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Like people have that feeling about, like everyone has that they like, you know, missed out on a trip to Disneyland, or like they didn't get to, you know, XYZ, meet a baseball player that they like, or
FOMO
um
exists in multiple facets.
yeah. And I think it's funny to map it onto fish because it's such a thing that people don't know. And I want our community to pass it around and love it and be like, "Oh my God, this is totally so and so." But I also like love when people who don't like this stuff at all will comment and be like, "I've got no idea what the fuck Gamehenge is, but this is so funny." Like I would like to thread that needle and be positive in that way, and like shed a positive light on like this type of guy because it exists for everything, you know. Like
Yeah.
it really does.
And that guy still has some good qualities. Like
Oh yeah.
he still is a good dude, and he's also a guy that's got rent due and a guy that's got other shit that he has going on. And don't worry, you can leave it to guys like me that have chosen to go the mental health content route to shed light on some of the dark stuff because
Yeah,
it's
right.
kind of comes more in my wheelhouse. Um, but yeah, I think I mean, kudos to you for not feeling a responsibility to being a voice. I think that that's something very important. And we'll keep the content authentic to you and keep it authentic to the vision that you have for this platform that you're creating. So I'm curious again how now that you're doing this kind of stuff, because the content is so just true to who you are and what you're into and your friends are into, has it changed your relationship with music at all? Has it made your scope of it, or are you looking at it through a different lens in any capacity? Because you go to shows, and I'm sure that you still get something out of being in the crowd and being a fan because you're just a normal dude who might have picked out the wrong color shirt today like I might have.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like, absolutely. Like that is the same thing I was talking about earlier about hearing expression and musicality, like when from a young age, and like picking that up in musicians. Like that is still something that I draw inspiration from when I see like Fish specifically, or you know, any great musician to watch live music, especially done improvised. Yeah, like it allows my brain to tap into like a knowing of myself, or like a clarity towards creativeness that really isn't matched anywhere else. Like I really am able to get to like a meditative state um like a bunch of different types of meditative states at these shows, whether it's like dancing and I've kind of like lost myself, or like whether like we're in the middle of this ambient jam and I'm like able to like really think clearly about how things are going right now, or where I'm at in a certain part of my life, or like where I'm going, or things I've been meditating on anyway. And now like the way that it's changed shows is like those moments just get so grateful. Like it's all gratitude. Like I just will look around. Oh man, I'll get emotional thinking about it. Like I'll look around at the crowd and just be like, it is so fucking cool that people dig your shit in this scene. Like, 'cause it's my favorite room to be in, is wherever Fish is playing. It's the best room to be in. And to think like, man, people are sharing your stuff with their buddies and reconnecting with their friends over like your video, or like that. I try not to get too like um I am proud of it, but like I try not to get too worked up in that way about it. Like it's just a cool thing. But like in those moments at shows, when I get to those meditative inspired places, it's heavy gratitude these days. It's a lot of that. Like just being like, man, this is so fucking sick right now. You know?
It's a cool scene, even if you step out of from the personal perspective, you know, like not what I'm doing in this scene, not even particularly what I'm contributing, just as being a patron and being a viewer and a fan. There is nothing like being in the crowd at a fish show, at a goose show, at a dog show. They're all unique and they're different microcosms of the same collective energy. It's just people being human and seeking something and doing it together and finding their bliss, whether it be the guy up on the rail singing every word, or the girl in the back that's spinning around with her eyes closed, or the
Yeah.
guy that looks over at his friend during Redbird and is like, time for a bird to fly. Like there's it's all of those different things constantly existing together, and it's a really beautiful thing. So I think something that you and I can both share from different ends of the spectrum is, in a way, we're trying to contribute and give back to something that really gives us something.
Oh yeah. I mean that's how I view a lot of this stuff, is like it is so cool that I've been given the opportunity to give back to this thing, and give people something to like laugh about and laugh at themselves about, and like um yeah, to be a part of it in that way is like the honor, like like truly the honor of my life. It is so cool. Because our scene is just like you said, it is a whether it's Goose or Fish or Dead and Co, or you know, a smaller local band, or like whatever it is, it's people who really truly appreciate art, and art that's done with honesty. And I take people enjoying the videos as a compliment in that way. You know, like I would like to accomplish things honestly. That's what I think that Fish does. Like, you know, there's no fucking like thrills to get them popular. Like that's for sure, you know, or like any of that kind of stuff. That's what people liked about the Dead. And so like yeah, it is very cool that the people who like those projects like the jokes. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it brings you closer to it too, because then
Oh yeah.
you not only do you want to pay more attention to it because it feeds your creativity and it gives you something else to create, and like something that you see at a show is something you can make a video about. Something that has happened in the car ride on the way home is something that you can take from. So it's a beautiful symbiotic, it feeding you so that you can feed back to it. And I think that that's something that is really special for to be a content creator in and of itself is a very cool thing. It's a challenging thing. There's a lot of trepidation to bearing yourself and to trying to make something from scratch. But when you have a community of people, that there's already kind of that baseline there's something that makes it even more special because it's like I'm making this stuff for me, but there's that other cloud of like other people's involvement. Like the videos that you've done like with like the one you did with Karina was a phenomenal one, and it's getting to the point that like, okay, cool, now I can play with this and I can, just like they're playing on stage. You said you're working on more long form content and trying to create things. It's driving your creativity forward. It's giving you license to go out on a limb and continue to throw things at the wall. And they say music is the art that feeds. And I think it's a beautiful cohabitance that you have between two things, just like I'm doing. Mental health is a passion, music is a passion. For you,
Yeah.
comedy and improv are passions, and music is a passion. And I think it takes a special kind of person to aim to blend those things together, to cross those boundaries and not be afraid to just throw something out there. You're a fan of music, and I'm sure that in the content creation and that love of music is what drove you to try something new and create the best show ever, which, I mean, it is such a beautifully simple idea that can yield so much conversation, because who hasn't been like, what's the best show? How many shows have you seen? But it's not how many
Yeah.
you've seen. It's what was the last show you saw, or what was the best show, or the first show. And I love the theme of the podcast is great, and your ability to just kind of let people come in and talk about it is really cool. So what does that project give to you as the host?
Well, I feel like that's just a really like I've always felt that's a really great way to get to know someone is through the type of music that they like or through the type of concerts they've seen or like through just a story of them going to a concert. Like I feel like you can really get a sense of like, a new coworker or a new friend or like, your friend's new boyfriend or some shit like that. Like, like it's really easy to kind of suss someone out
Yeah.
in that way. And so, it's less about like, you know, tell me the best concert ever. It's more about like, yeah, what do you value in the presentation? What do you value in like a beautiful memory? And like right now it's like so cool to get to talk to musicians that I admire. Like I hold musicians in the highest degree of artists. Um and I think that they are the coolest. I wish I was a musician so fucking bad. And I love getting to talk to them about art. And I think that maybe, you probably feel the same way listening back to your episodes. Like one of the coolest things that happens in any of the episodes of Best Show Ever is I'd like for it to be a conversation. And like you've done a really good job with that on this podcast of like letting it feel like a hang. And there's always like a moment like 15, sometimes 20 minutes into any episode where I'm like, now it sounds like a phone call. Now it sounds like we're just like chopping it up, um, just hanging out. Uh, and it's really really fun to get to that place with anyone, like with a good friend who I already know their best shows, and then we start talking and then they're like kind of unfolding different parts of the show that I didn't even know they've cared about, or if it's someone cool from a band that I enjoy, like telling stories about them getting into art and getting into seeing live performance or like being blown away by something. I think it's like really important to be blown away by things and to like remember those moments. Not just like see a really good show, be like, that was fucking sick, and then like walk out and be like, all right, what's the next show I'm gonna see, coming up? Like sit with something and let it like really affect you and like be a huge benchmark in your life. It's just really cool to hear people I admire talk about those kind of moments. Um, and I'm someone who is always searching for that moment. Like for me, it's I, I go to shows to get closer to myself. You know, it sounds like a selfish thing because I'm usually at these shows with like a group of friends or like family members or something like that. But I really am, uh trying to get closer to who I am when I'm listening to this music, and so uh it's really cool to hear people talk about the moments that made them them and these like memories that they draw on without even knowing sometimes for their current art, or like hearing them talk about how seeing a particular artist then changed the way that they work. Yeah, it's just a really good way to get to know someone in an hour. And everyone wants to talk about their best show ever, like this.
Yeah. it's
I mean,
it's
come on.
such a it's a perfect icebreaker. It's a perfect, hey, like this isn't going to be anything too deep or crazy, which, maybe I need to steal a little bit of that from you because mine is not. Mine goes deep. Um but sincerely thank you for the compliment. It is very important to me for these to feel like a hang, to just be a conversation. Because at the end of the day, like, who the fuck wants to get interviewed? You know, you just
Yeah,
want to hang out.
or listen to an hour long like stiff interview. It's like
Right,
like blah, 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 blah. And it's like I'm glad you asked that. Blah, 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 blah. Like you want it
right.
to feel like we're in the room hanging.
Yeah, you're just chilling with your friends, and I knew that, or I had at least a feeling that we were like-minded in that, because your medium of it being a conversation about best shows, mine about mental health and the challenges and what have you, underlying they have the same thing. It's us trying to connect with people and have a conversation and get to know somebody because we're human. And that's kind of one of the things that we're here to do, is just meet people and have fun. And like, you and I, like, we're not fucking musicians, but we can
No.
talk about how fucking cool it is to be in the crowd. We can tell
Yeah.
stories about how much fun you've had at a show at Alpine. I can tell a story about how much fun I've had at MSG, or how much fun you don't remember or that I can't recall, whatever, wherever
Yeah.
you fall within that. Um, and I think that you are a very interesting cat in the way that there's a lot of substance underneath the lightheartedness that you bring, which I think is very important, and it circles back to that thing of honesty. And yeah, all of us make jokes about fish. We all make jokes about goose. I have a shirt in my closet that says not 100% sold on goose. Like,
Right. Right.
we all make jokes, but at the same time, there's a collective hive mind to seeking something, trying to better ourselves. And music is a beautiful way to connect. And it's a beautiful thing that whatever medium you take that into, if it's podcasting, if it's making social media videos, if it's working with an organization at one of like the sobriety tables at a venue, whatever microcosm of life that you want to step into, music is a beautiful connection point, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to share with your buddy. Because yeah, there are the people that are like, I just listen to the radio, but like, probably not talking to those people all that often, to be
Yeah.
fair.
Right.
um it's cool to just have music as the connection point.
Yeah, I think that like art in general, like, it's the same thing with comedy and like funny movies and sketches and stuff. Like, we were just talking the other day about showing your friend, like your freshman year of college, showing your friends YouTube videos and like laughing about them. That like it sounds like it's a no big deal, but like that you're showing your friends. Like there's this Bill Hader interview, and I can't remember what talk show it's on. I bring it up all the time. it's like 10 years ago and he's on like Conan or something, and he talks about like getting into comedy and like getting into weird movies and then having a friend over like for a play date and then like showing him the weird movie, and he's like, it's like showing your friend a piece of your soul. He's like, and like your friend's watching the movie and you're like hoping they get it, and it's like, do you like my soul? And he says it, and I think about that all the time, especially like if you're bringing people into this fish thing, or if you're showing someone who knows all the music that you know, if you're trying to show them something new, or show them a part of a song that you really thought was great, or like, oh man, I got so much out of this. Like, yeah, that's a reflection of your soul in those moments. And I, yeah, I read super far into these improvised moments that these bands create. Um, and that's what I'm at these shows for. And so yeah, it's really cool to marry the two. And um like you said, meeting people through this scene, you brought that up in Sax's episode. Like, I've met so many great friends through this music scene, and they are also people who like, yeah, value introspection and value taking things seriously, but also not taking yourself too seriously. And they value like silliness, but also like how serious life can be, and how serious like a message from the universe can feel, like and but also making fun of that, also making fun of, like,
Right.
it's been really great to find that through people like Sax, and through people like Sean, who runs Long Strange Putt, and um just tons of folks that are, yeah, they've got it. Like, they understand that life is serious, but life is also silly. To take life seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Like, these are values that get brought up in the fish community in a subtextual way that, it's not meant to be taken seriously, but man, you can take that lesson to heart, like, for sure.
And particularly within the fish community, it is taken so seriously.
Yeah,
It's
dude.
it's a counterculture for some people. It's people, I'm going to church. It's
Yeah.
okay. I'm gonna go to a concert, but
You heard what
you
you
can
just
go to
said.
church. Yeah, like I respect that. It's because music, in the same way as mental health, it means something different to everybody, and it's interesting to see how people navigate musical endeavors on their own. Like, how some people want to be in a group, some people want to be on their own, some people just want to be able to listen on their own in a quiet room. But kind of like how you said, creating content is sharing a piece of your soul. I think a beautiful thing, and a kind of a love language, when you send somebody a song, or you're like, hey,
Yeah.
like, this made me think of you, or hey, like, you should really check this out because I think you'll dig it. There's the subtext of like you understanding a person, or where they're at in their life, and things of that nature. So there are so many parallels between music and life. And like I said earlier, life is comedy, life is a joke. And when you can laugh at yourself, and you can laugh at life, and you can laugh at music, like, these guys get idolized so
Yeah.
heavily. Like,
Yeah.
Trey can't walk down the street without getting somebody asking for a picture, and it getting posted in 6 Facebook groups, and then getting shared on Fish Twitter, and like
Yeah.
it,
Right.
it just it goes so deep. But there are so many guys that both you and I have talked to that have the same shit going on in their lives that we do. They're dealing with anxiety. They're having an issue with their girlfriend. They're worried about how they're doing as a parent. And I think something that I enjoy bringing to light is that we're all just fucking dudes and chicks. Like,
Yeah.
we're all just figuring it out. But the most beautiful thing is that no matter where you are on the spectrum, if you're in the crowd, we're all on a level playing field. Yeah, some people have a laminate and this and that, whatever. But
Yeah. Right.
like
Right. Right.
the nature of the experience is that we're all seeking something, and we're all doing it together. And in the ways that I've said it, music has brought me everything. It's literally brought us to right here, right now, for like,
Yeah.
for one thing. But it's brought me my friends, my girlfriend, adventures, so many different things. You know, I'm releasing an episode that comes out tomorrow about sobriety, and it's a solo episode, and it's tomorrow when the episode drops is my 2 year anniversary of being sober.
Congrats,
And
man.
I appreciate, thank you very much.
Yeah.
But music induced it and now has also brought it back the other side. Like music made me get into drugs heavily and party
Yeah.
and find myself, but it's also now brought me back around to myself, and it's brought me closer to the music, and it's brought me closer to people. And obviously, you know, there's a chemical culture within music and within the things that we're into, but it goes so beyond that, because the chemical culture aspect is a form of seeking, it's a form of finding, it's a form of going out and looking. So what do you look for in music?
Well, so I'm looking for inspiration, and like it also can be such a portal. Like music can be such a portal to, like, listening to music personally can be such a portal into like the past, and it can be such a portal into like a certain memory or a certain feeling. And I think that there's been, like, as far as like seeing live music, there have been multiple eras of different types of seekers that I've been, and I'm someone who smokes weed pretty heavily, and so that's like a mainstay kind of no matter what, uh, whether I'm going to a show or not. But there are, within like a given run, there's a night where I'm like, yeah, I want to like find adventure tonight, and I want to find like a party, and then there's and so that night might be, me uh going off with psychedelics or something. And then the next night it's like, I want to enjoy tonight, and I also want to recover. And
Yeah, for sure.
and so it's like just a weed sort of a deal. And then Sunday it's like, I want to get us back to the hotel. And so I'm going to drive, and and I'm not going to do anything. And so, or
Someone
like,
has to be the adult.
I feel like, it really, um, I do feel fortunate because in my family we have plenty of family members who have a tough relationship with substance abuse, and uh I feel very fortunate that I'm someone who um hasn't been in a destructive uh period of my life, even though that there's periods of my life where I've done more drugs than other times, or done certain drugs that I don't do anymore. Um, but and there hasn't been a concerted effort ever to be like, I am going to not XYZ, or I am going to XYZ. But like recently, just in moving to California and like how my life has, you know, followed itself to here, I really haven't been drinking at all for the last like 3 years. I don't even think I've been drunk in like 4 years. Like, and then you do that thing where you're like, you're at a show and you're like, I don't have a beer. And you're like, I don't have a beer. I don't have a beer. How about
Yep.
that? Like, and like in your early 20s, it would be like, what the fuck are we even doing if we're not holding a $19 beer? Like, how are we
Right.
not,
Right.
And so I've really, really enjoyed that not being a part of my life anymore. And at this point, it feels like pretty set in stone. Um, and that was like, again, like not through like an effort, where I was like, I am gonna stop this. But like, I'm so glad that I did. Um, on the other side of that coin, like, and this is not the question that you asked, but like recently, I was like out in Mexico with my girlfriend for her birthday, just for like the weekend. And I jumped in the pool with my weed pen on the first day. And like I said, I smoke weed all the time. And so, I, dude, I mean, it was a really rough 3 days. It was like a very rough, like, ringing out of me not having THC in my system, and that really bugged me. It really bugged me that I was that dependent on that in that way. Um, and so there has like the thoughts of like sobriety, like just my own personal sobriety, have
Hmm.
been a little more at the forefront recently. And the thoughts of like what are certain things like in my life for, like what are they accomplishing. um and I really do think that like drug use, and especially like drug use at a show, is like a very personal thing. And I really don't hold judgment for folks who like go really hard at shows with drugs, and I absolutely hold no judgment for folks who don't do anything at shows, because I think it's such a necessary part of the scene that we have folks there that are able to enjoy the scene, like in the one show at a time category, because it feels like you're not supposed, like it feels like you're not allowed to come, like if you're not fucking taking acid, man, and that's just like not the case, and like so unfair, and like it puts the whole thing in a box. And I try not to put my self in a box in that way ever. Like if I'm going to fish, I got to make sure that I secure some acid before I leave for the weekend, or like I got like uh the experience has been like impactful for me in so many different types of ways, that it's not like this plus this equals this. It's an environment where I feel safe to take psychedelics, which is nice. And it's an environment where I feel safe to, um, be a little out of my head. Should I be, but I will say that that has gone away a little bit. Like there's been a couple times, like, for instance, recently at the Sphere, one of the nights I was like, about as high as I've been like in a long, long time, and I was not doing well in conversation. I was not like doing well, like meeting people who were like very cool, could be helpful for my career, and I know that like fish is not for networking and fish is not for business and everything, but like I was like, this sucks. This really fucking sucks right now that I'm this way. And this is like how this is going. Like uh yeah, it's just, and I'm like, I guess I wouldn't have to deal with that if I wasn't like the guy posting fish videos. But like, I just like met someone who was really excited to talk about the podcast, and I look like a fucking moron right now. Like, and I'm like, I didn't like that feeling, and I'm sure, more than likely the person's like, it's fish, it's awesome, ha ha ha, it's great, he's messed up. But like, I don't want to be guy who has pupils like dinner plates every time you meet him. Like I'd like it to be a like, because I enjoy those moments as well, and I also
Right.
enjoy like the opportunity to meet like a cool new friend at a show, and um it's a little more difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
If the fucking room is melting apart, like it's like it's like
Yeah.
to be like, yeah, let's connect, like it's a little
Yeah.
more difficult to
Yeah.
like
Well,
have a meaningful moment.
when the seats are haptic, you can't get your bearings the right way.
I'm already at a loss. I'm already
Right.
behind.
Um, no, I think that's a super cool perspective to have. Because I mean, use at shows and otherwise is an absolutely personal experience. And from personal perspective, there are more, there are, I don't want to go too deep into like stories and stuff because who knows, I might end up on a podcast where I talk about shows, but um, in reality, those psychedelic experiences that you have at shows are life changing, and they can really
Yeah.
be important to personal growth. They can be important to you sharing that with somebody that's had a little too much too fast. You help them out, and then they see you in a different light, and it establishes a different form of relationship and connection. Or you're at the show and you're so just in the music that it connects you to it more, and something that you may not even have, a show you may not have even been excited to go to, or a show
Mhm.
that you were prepared for but got blindsided by something that you didn't expect. You might have a new favorite song, you might meet somebody new, you might see somebody on stage that's like, holy shit, like, have you seen so and so? And it is such an interpersonal, and it's, it's that act of, you buy the ticket, take the ride,
Yeah.
but it's a pretty cool ride to take,
Yeah.
honestly. And like, why not for for a moment, or when you can, or if you're able,
Right. If you're able, totally. I really, like the mushroom thing is such a popular deal right now. And like, I really, like I was like in the cannabis world for a while. Like I worked at a dispensary in Chicago called Dispensary 33. Check them out. It's like the best dispensary in Chicago. But like being around weed people and stuff, like you want to be like, weed is for everyone. And everyone would be better if they smoked weed. And it's like, that's just like not true. Like it's just not true. And like that's super true of mushrooms at any given moment. Like there are people who should like not trip on mushrooms on certain nights, like if they're feeling a certain way or all that kind of stuff. And it's like same thing as we were talking about before. It's not like me with my depression plus an eighth of mushrooms plus a fish show equals better. Like that,
right?
like, like, like that's not it would be awesome if that was the case, but like,
Be a hot
yeah,
t-shirt, by the way.
yeah, right, yeah, God, I gotta start getting into merch. But I like it,
Or give it a tune or putt and be like, hey, I had this idea.
I give them one every day. They never take my shit. They make actually good stuff. Um, um, no, but I like, I would love to be like, yeah, everyone should dose. And like, I think that everyone should dose at certain points, and everyone should dose like in certain moments of their life, or if they're in for it, if they're down for it. Like, um, I like the third time I ever took mushrooms, I had like the worst night of my fucking life. It was awful. The friends I was with like did not treat it in a very well or a very good situation. It was a really bad trip, and I was like really uh terrified by it, to be honest, super terrified by it, and like kind of put psychedelics down for a while. And I really that was a good idea. I don't think plowing ahead was like the the fucking answer.
Not the
Um
time to steer into the skid.
Yes, yeah, and I like am glad that I was able to like come back to it and like have a good time, and then like now be able to like kind of control the dosage a little bit more and like understand what I'm doing in that way. But like, yeah, it's not it's not as simple as like dose everybody, it's not that simple. But it's like you said, it can be extremely impactful, it can be extremely helpful, and it can like any way to have like yourself uh connect with something that is like deeper in the universe than just like what is right in front of you and like your day-to-day schedule and like all the stories you're telling yourself. Like if you are able to get pulled out of that and recognize some things through psychedelics, like that is a super good thing. But like you gotta be down for it. And uh yeah, I don't know. It's for me. I love doing it at a show. Love doing it around music. Love having like friends there. Like I love, now I've got like such a better relationship with like my own mental health. So like panic attacks don't happen for me like they used to anymore. And so, um, yeah, it's to say that you're like in control of like any sort of like drug use or like anything that you're using to like expand your mind or something like is probably foolish, is like probably naive. Like you're not fully in control of it. Like it's coming out of wants and desires of like greater things that you're trying to figure out, or something that you're trying to feel that you're like, or a feeling that you're trying to escape or something. But there is there's like a level of consent that you can give yourself to be like, this might be crazy. This might be something I'm not used to. And this might be something that's worth trying to shake me up a bit, to shake up my nervous system a bit. And like, doesn't have to be mushrooms. Like it just fucking be like you start doing yoga more often, or you like keep a journal, you know.
Yeah,
but
it
but
doesn't
like
have to be in a baggie or anything. Like,
right, yeah, like you know, it or it doesn't have to be like at a church, or like it doesn't, you know, like. But I going into something where you're gonna be out of your where you're agreeing to be out of yourself for a little bit, or like agreeing to be uh you know afraid. Like I think the people like who don't do psychedelics are like, that 45 minutes after you put the tab in your mouth is like fucking terrifying. You're just like, oh, what's it gonna be? And like, you know,
yep.
like that's a terrible way to go into something. Literally anything. It's a terrible way to go into driving your car. Like, what if if you were like, oh fuck, what's gonna happen? Like you're gonna crash the car. Like
Yeah,
if you get in the car like that, or if you know, like um going into things with the right mindset is like super key. Not That's not a hot take, but I think that there is a lot like within our scene of like, I'm at a Fish show, I'm at a Dead show, I got to be doing acid because I'm wearing a tie dye and it's got to be sweet, and like it's just, that doesn't have to like, you can lose yourself, not to be like John Mayer and be like, I don't dose, and you can lose yourself different ways, but you can.
for sure. And as far as John goes, let's talk to the headbands from like 2018 and 2019 tour that I saw. But
Yeah,
anyway,
dude.
you know, you didn't wear a full picnic table outfit and a bandana for no reason. But anyway,
Yeah, we got
uh,
receipts.
yeah, pop up the text. I can pop it up. Um, but yeah, I mean, control is subjective, right? Like
Yeah.
my version of control versus yours is different. The guy who I think totally might not be in control might be as copacetic as need be. And something that I was talking about with a friend of mine yesterday was, you don't necessarily attract what you want, you attract what you are.
Yeah.
And if you're chaotic inside, you're going to only bring further chaos. In the same respect to that 45 minutes after you put a dose in your mouth, if you're like freaking out, if you're like, oh, like when is it? Like when's it gonna hit? Like what am I gonna? I don't know.
Like
Like and then
what do you think's gonna happen? Like, ooh, this is awesome now. Like, and it's like, no,
right,
you're gonna like
right.
that's
You're
the
gonna
state you're in.
right. The back of your knees are gonna get hit. Your lower back's gonna get hit, and you're gonna be like, oh, all right. And then you're gonna try, and then you're just gonna loosen up, and then shit's gonna start waving around, and you're gonna be like, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and and the more you do it, the more you know. But it's important to release that in release that inhibition. But
Yeah.
shout out Natasha. But
Right, exactly. Feel the
it's
rain on your
important.
skin.
Yeah, you know, why not? It's important to be able to ride with that fear also, because it's the same in mental health. It's the same in other aspects of life. When you're willing to bond with that fear, and I'm of the belief that fear is actually a guide.
Yeah,
And
man.
it's important, like when you're afraid of something, that usually means that it's something that you should do,
Yeah.
because it's going
Yeah.
to get you to that next stage.
Yeah, and like you know, I actually talk about that with Sax a little bit on to plug my own podcast on your podcast on Best Show Ever. He talks about like the you know, the lessons that we learn, you know, in these moments where we're on psychedelics or something are like, they're lessons that you know, like you know that already. Sometimes it's really nice to hammer it home, or like it's this big moment where you're like, oh, that's right, you know. But it's usually something that you're familiar with. Like it's a concept that you know. Like if you're more relaxed, you'll do better work, or if you're more in touch with yourself honestly, then like your work will reflect honestly, or like that kind of stuff is there for you. And like I think it sometimes takes um taking a breath, like, and just like being with yourself for a moment to understand some of those things are true. And like, you know, for me, when I'm at these shows, like those are the type of messages that are coming through of like, you need to have more fun with what you're working on right now, or you need to take this aspect more, you know, less seriously. And I don't know like where that's coming from. I don't know if that's probably just coming from inside of my head, you know, it's just me telling myself that. It's not coming from acid. It's not coming from like the bowl I just smoked. It's not coming from Trey. It's coming from like all like the confluence of uh inspiration that's going on around you. And it's important to be able to note those moments. Because like that's what you're paying the money to go to these shows for, is like getting in touch with these thoughts and feelings. Like um it's just got to be like for Trey, it has got to be so amazing to see all of the art that gets made off of his art. And I'm not just talking about like donut koozies. Like I'm talking about like like I'm talking about like the bands here. And shout out donut koozies. Like buy donut koozies. You know, not to knock the guy who's selling donut koozies, but like there's all this
The
like cool
15
like
guys that are selling donut koozies.
right, right. But there's so much amazing art that has sprung out of like the inspiration that's come from these shows. And like, you know, people have taken what they've gotten from these shows and gone on and done great things, not just an amazing portrait of Trey. Like, of course those exist, but like, you know, you look at someone like a Joseph Gordon-Levitt, like went to those shows when he was a kid, and like I think he's someone like embodies like the characteristics of what it means to be um a head or a hippie or a, you know, an artist. And he like that, it springs forth in like what he does as an actor. And that's like something that like there's all these different avenues for lessons within the scene. Like there's all, and it's just like we were talking about earlier when you asked me like what mental health means to me. Like all of these moments are just what you put into them. Like you can be so cynical about any given aspect of it if you'd like to be. Like it's all ripe for cynicism if you'd like it to be. It's also super ripe for inspiration and you know, awe. Like it's something that's like awesome, like awe inspiring. I think that there's examples of people who can be, you know, mentors within this scene, and people who are, you know, like exceptional examples of how to be. Um, you know, that maybe the outside world views them as like a guy who goes to 10 fish shows a year, but this is someone who is like really dialed in happiness. They've really dialed in like family, happiness, creativity, and like sustaining themselves. And not everything's for everyone, but like, man, though, if you're feeling some of these messages at a show, or if you're feeling some of this inspiration at a show, like you got to say yes to it and don't be cynical about it. Cause it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt fucking took inspiration from the fish shows and that's why he became a good actor. That's why. Oh, sick. Like, yeah, it's very easy to be that way,
For
guy in
sure.
comment section. Like it's so easy, but you can also be like, man, what an example. Like I know that he took something that I'm also taking and I'm going to take forward in my acting career. Or if, you know, someone within the scene that you are inspired by, like from a mental health aspect or like or an interviewing aspect, you're like, man, like what an example of how to be. Or in these moments when you're at shows and you're in the middle of a hood jam and all of a sudden you're like telling yourself everything that you've ever needed to hear. Don't like be like, blah, 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 like, oh, you're just on drugs. Shut the fuck up. Like, no, that's say yes to that. Agree to yourself in that moment. That's like, that's happening for a reason, you know? Um, and like that's not going to change. Like for me, I'll always get that out of this stuff. It's just whatever language is spoken while music is being played is like, it speaks to me in the way that it needs to. And so I'm super grateful for it. Like I'm, you know, I will never ever hold myself in the same regard as like some of these musicians who pull this kind of stuff off for me, because they just give me so much juice to keep creating and uh and um tapping into that sort of ether that's out there for us if we'd like it.
Yeah, it inspires you. It drives you forward. It gives you a place to release. It gives you a place to enjoy. It gives you a place to grow, to challenge. It opens up so many different avenues, like you said. And you look at people in the inspiration sense, like you had an episode recently with Mike Fanoia, and one of the things he said was his favorite thing is sitting behind the stage to look at the other people having that experience. And that's something that he can take into his own stand up and his own projects. You look at, man, what is Trey creating? Billy Strings and his bass player Royal Massat met at a Fish show. And look at where Billy Strings is now. And
Yeah.
there are so many. How many of your friends have had girlfriends that they met because of a show? How many people do you know that have met their best friend or met, I mean, Fish isn't for networking, but I'm sure you also feel the same way that I do, that us existing within the music space from a content perspective, it's there too. It opens up avenues, it opens up doors. And that can be personally, professionally, romantically, whatever the case may be. There's nothing like, you know, a New Year's kiss and falling in love with somebody and then having that ability to share that forever. And
Yeah.
a beautiful theme that you have, a beautiful thread that you've sewn through this whole podcast is just the saying yes. And I think a really cool construct of you, and that I've seen, now getting to know you, is that you consistently say yes and to life in the same way that you learned it through your improv school and practice and all of those things. You say yes and you keep going. You say yes and you try the next thing. You say yes and are inspired by the next thing. And that in and of itself is kind of indicative of what you said mental health means to you. It's awareness, it's honesty, it's recognition of where you're at and saying yes. And I think that that's a really cool perspective of life to have. And something that I want to do is, I don't want to ask you about your best show ever.
Okay.
I I just want to say, Cam, what's the best day you've had recently?
Oh man. Well, I was telling you before we started that this past weekend was my birthday.
Hmm.
And so I mean, this weekend was ripe for good days, but Friday, the day of my actual birthday, I went to the Sphere with my girlfriend, with my brother Kyle, both of whom were not able to be at the Fish run. And so awesome just to watch their to bring back what you said about Mike, just to watch their faces be amazed by the Sphere was cool. And I was also there with Sean, who runs Long Strange Putt, and his girlfriend Meg, and our buddy Vince, Vinny. And yeah, like, those guys are just, I mean, we laughed. The show was awesome. Amazing show. Sphere's cool. We know about that, and that's talked about on, I think, only 100 podcasts.
Right.
But
We could do another episode about that.
yeah, dude, yeah, right, that's covered. The amount of laughing that took place in the Airbnb after the show, like, we did not go do Vegas. Like, we just went back to the Airbnb and we're like putting on music and ordering pizzas and, goofing around. And like, I mean, having my brother and then, Sean, who has absolutely become one of those buddies that we've talked about, that is just like, just gets it in that way. Like, I mean, we were laughing, like, just belly laughing, dude, like harder than I've laughed in so long. And like, that was such a good day. And then rolled it into the following day. We came back to LA. Me, Sean, my girlfriend, Jess, and then his girlfriend Meg, and we had a friend drive up from San Diego and like surprise Jess and Meg. They didn't know that it was going to happen. Our friend Alice Ward showed up, and like, yeah, just had like the best day with her too. Just more like, just laughing our asses off, just going to a flea market and like trying on funny stuff and buying like funny sunglasses. And like, it was just like, just a beautiful weekend of friendship. And, you know, man, just like, my face is still sore from how much we laughed, and that's what it's all about. I mean, the shows were great. It was really nice to go out to nice dinners with friends and stuff, but like, we were just laughing, dude. To the best. It's the best day
I
ever.
There you go. Tell you what, idea. Let's bookmark that. Maybe we'll do a branded team podcast one time. We'll be co-hosts. Best day ever.
The offshoot, the
Yeah,
Mac Miller
exactly.
podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Um, No, but I have a good friend. It's not like he came up with this at all, but he really kind of stands by it, and it's just that life rips, man.
It rips.
It's so sick. It's so cool that we get to be able to do the things that we do, that we get to have people in our lives, that we get to have fun and laugh and bullshit and not take it seriously and poke fun at each other and cry together and hold each other and see new things each other, explore and also do those things for ourselves. You know, we get to live a really cool life, and we're really lucky that there are bands like Fish and other bands that exist that kind of help give us something to go off of together.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, how cool it was. Like, yeah, we just kept doing that, that Paul Rudd thing where he's doing hot ones. He's
Who
like,
would have
look at
thunk?
us.
Who
Who
would
would
have
have thought?
thunk?
We just kept doing that the whole time. Look at us, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And things are so cool right now. And it's, yeah, we're in this very cool era of getting to see these awesome shows and, share it with great buddies and family and stuff. And, yeah, to be a part of it. And like you and I getting to chat with people within the scene is just, yeah, it's the coolest. I mean, just so
It's fucking
grateful.
sick.
It's fucking sick, dude. It rips.
It really does. And it's funny. A buddy of mine and I are making a sticker for Jam Cruise that's just the Fish no, but it just says "Who's got it better than us?" Just because
It's
it's the
who's got it
truth.
better
Like,
than us?
who does? Um, But what I want to do right now is I want to just give you open floor and open space. If there, and this could be to anybody, could be to your girlfriend, to your friends, to your family, to other people that watch your content, to fellow peers, to just some guy on the couch. If there's one thing that Cam would want to say to the world, what would that be?
Oh man, I'm gonna hammer home this thread that we were talking about. It's you got to say yes to the moments. You got to say yes to the stuff that you want to create. I think that whether you're someone who considers themselves a creator or not, we all have things that we'd like to do. We all have things that we'd like to pull off, or we'd like to take a crack at. Whether it's going to do stand up, at an open mic, or painting something, or starting a poetry reading group, or whatever it, or sobriety, or we're all have something that we want to try, and we're afraid, and and then we see someone else do it, and then we get angry, and then it's this weird, like, man, like, fuck that, I could totally do that better than that person. And like, you probably could, so you might as well, like, you got to say yes to stuff, say yes to yourself. And if there's something that's been like itching at the back of your brain of like, I got to do this, then you got to do it, because it pays dividends. Um, and I feel like that's what the last year's been, is just like, keep saying yes to stuff and it pays dividends. And I'm living by it hard right now. And I would also like to say that, so many people, and I've brought up some of their names on the podcast, like Andrew Sachs and Sean from Long Strange Putt, Aaron from No Simple Road, RJ from Osiris. And, these are people who I held in super high regard. I have a lot of respect for these guys even before I met them. And I didn't, it's not that I viewed them as unapproachable. I just, I didn't think that they would be able to help me in any capacity or at all. And, these are people who have helped me immensely, and have been selfless and have been, allowed me to flourish, not not because they want to take credit for it, just because that they're excited on it. And whatever you're trying to pull off, those people exist, that want to help you, and they want to connect, and they want to share the wisdom of what they've done. And I'm one of those people too. And so, folks who are listening, if you've got something that you like are trying to get off the ground, or if there's something that you like, have an idea for, and you're like, just want to ask someone if it's stupid or not, please ask me. More than likely, I'm going to say it's not stupid, unless it's like a really, really destructive deal. But I can't encourage people enough to start digging into a niche, or trying their crack at something that they're scared of. because it's going to make you a better person. It's going to get you closer to yourself, and you're going to be you're going to be glad you did it. And so I think that Mike, you're an example of that with this podcast and wanting to open up with people, and wanting to create a space where people are able to open up. I mean, it's so funny at the end of this to be given the floor, because I feel like I was given the floor the whole time, to talk about some very, very serious stuff that I feel strongly about. And so you know, um, it, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, Mike's got a cool podcast and Cam's got a cool podcast and he makes videos, and like, oh man, I wish I like, say yes to yourself, make that thing, because you're just going to help out the next person who's like, oh man, this guy's got a great whatever it is that you just made. And it keeps paying itself back. And so, say yes to yourself. And Mike, thanks so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
I think that that's really great advice to give to people, to say yes to yourself, to believe in yourself, to celebrate yourself, celebrate your friends, let them celebrate you too. We are all in this together. We're all just trying to figure it out. We're all meat bags floating on a space rock. And at the end of the day, we're figuring it out together, whether that be mental health, comedy, music, life. We're all in this as a team, and we're all trying to get to wherever we're going. And wherever you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. So say yes to that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the kind words so much. And in a real way, I genuinely love the stuff that you're doing. I think you have an incredible demeanor. I think you have a really phenomenal personality to do this kind of thing. I think, you have a lighthearted nature, but you have a lot of substance, and there's a lot of things that you see that other people might not. And however you want to wrap that up in a bow, whether it be in a funny video or a podcast talking about concerts, whatever the case may be, I think that you're really making phenomenal contributions to the scene, and I look forward to continuing to be a fan and support you, and get to know each other more and be friends and work together and do things. And I really appreciate you taking the time today. And yeah, guys, go listen to the best show ever. Go follow at Mr. Cam on Instagram. Buy a cameo.
Yeah.
And in a serious way, I appreciate you and the niche that you're carving out, but I appreciate just who you are. And it's been awesome to get to know you more through this conversation today.
Man, Mike, it's true about the outro too. That made me feel really good, dude. I got to do the intros and outros with the guests. It feels so good.
it
Thanks,
it
man.
it it hits different, and you are genuinely welcome. So we're gonna bring this one to a close, and I always do by sending a message out to the people that are listening or the people that are watching, is that I believe in you in every single fucking thing that you do in this life, and I love you. And wherever you go from here, whatever you choose to do, whatever brings you closer to you, say yes to it, and say yes to yourself, and find whatever that thing is that takes you to wherever you're going. So, Cam, thanks again. And guys, we'll see you in the next episode. And until then, take care and be well.